And before we start our interview with Foundry Surrey, I want to play for you quickly a promotional video that they have put together to show you what Foundry is all about.
We live in one of the most beautiful places in the world, and young people are struggling. We hear it from the school especially, that they just are having young people come through their doors fraught with anxiety, filled with depression, and afraid to tell their story about what's happening with them.
It's kind of hard to be like, you know what, I'm really struggling and I want to get help right now. Well, that's great, but there's a 6-month waiting list before you can get help. Foundry has created an environment where people can come in and say, I need help. I don't know what to do. I don't know why I'm doing it. I don't know how to do it, but I'm here.
Foundry is so welcoming, and I'm able to just say like, hey, like there's all these other services. Because everything is all under one roof, everyone comes together at Foundry.
So we offer mental health and substance use services, medical services, peer navigation, and social services. What's unique about Foundry is that it brings community partners together. It encourages them to work together under one roof in a space that has been purpose-built for young people.
What is offered here in Foundry is that people come in off the streets and they're supported in many ways. And I wish they had this when I was a youth.
Coming in and asking for help can often be one of the hardest steps in the process. And so having a place that feels comfortable, having a place that's welcoming, having a place that's different than usual clinics is exactly what Foundry is about. And any Foundry center that you're going to see across British Columbia is going to have some of the same design features. The question that a young person or a parent should ask, not where do I go for help, but where's Foundry in my community? Foundry is a game changer, and Foundry is a lifesaver.
And as always, in Surrey, we are presenting on the shared traditional territories and unceded territories of the Kwantlen, Samiamu, Katzie, and Coast Salish peoples. And we're very happy and proud to be doing our work here, as is the Foundry in Surrey, which will be located. I'm going to go and let them introduce themselves, and they can tell you where they're going to be located, but definitely in Surrey, serving especially the citizens of North Surrey. So Wendy and Aahelee, I'll just turn it over to you to introduce yourselves.
Sure. Thank you very much, Daniel. We're really excited to be here and to talk about Foundry Surrey, especially as we're getting closer to doors opening. It's a great time just to remind folks of what Foundry Surrey is and what it's going to look like in our community. So my name is Wendy Potter. My pronouns are she and her. And I am the manager for Foundry Surrey with Pacific Community Resources Society. And of course, Pacific Community Resources Society is the host agency for Foundry in Surrey.
I am Aahelee. My pronouns are she and her. I work with Wendy. I am the admin assistant for Foundry Surrey and working with PCRS as well.
I had to make sure I turned off my phone because my phone rings, my computer will ring, and then this whole thing will ring, and then we'll need Jeff to edit this out. So that's great. Thank you so much for that introduction. And, it has been 4 years. I think if people search back to a video that I had done 4 years ago with Jen Lowry of Foundry and others from Foundry. And I think we have the Foundry central office on that video as well. There was a great introduction to Foundry in general. But since then, we've launched a virtual Foundry in Surrey, and I know people have used those services. And also just most recently, we've launched a campaign specifically for teenage boys and men to talk about mental health. And I think that's been up on the website, up on our Surrey Schools mental health website at surreyschools.ca/mental health. We put that up there as well. And so now, though, we are in exciting times. I think I just got a memo and noticed that you folks were demoing, right? And with that construction. And so there is I think we all are eagerly excited for the Foundry North to be set up. And the reason I put North in now, because we do have a Foundry in South Surrey that's been approved as well. That's a few years down the road, but I'm using North on purpose because this one is located specifically in the North. But when I turn it back over to you just to talk about the Foundry, I'm going to put up your slideshow and you folks can go through the slides there, and then and we can have the conversation about the Foundry and what's to come in the next few months for the people of Surrey, specifically North Surrey.
Absolutely. So we'll just move ahead.
Yeah.
There we go. So I think before we even talk about Foundry Surrey and what it's going to look like, we talk about why Foundry and the real need. And I know, Daniel, part of the conversation today was talking about diversity and mental health and the need in our community to have diversity and mental health. And this just really reminds people, these stats are a couple of years old at this point, and really came out right around the time of COVID, that 1 in 4 Canadian youth are affected by mental illness and problematic substance use. And 12 to 24-year-olds experience the highest incidence of mental disorders and addiction out of any group. And so just knowing some of these stats really helps us to understand why Foundry and why Foundry is so important in our community. So Foundry services are geared specifically to youth between the ages of 12 and 24 and their families. And really focus in on mental health and substance use, as well as other services to really support and care for the youth in our community.
Wendy and Aahelee, we are talking about diversity as well. That's been our theme for the year. Do you find that with these stats, and maybe just even anecdotally, in Surrey, we have such a diverse population, right? Very different from Saskatchewan, for example, or Toronto, or even Vancouver. We have a very unique population. Do you find that sometimes with these stats, I mean, 1 in 4, I've sometimes heard even 1 in 2 have, mental health problems. I just saw a commercial on TV about that, put on by, I think, the Canadian Mental Health Society, or it might have been the government. But 1 in 2 have mental health problems, as high as that. Do you find that with Surrey, with our diverse population, with all the different ethnicities there, do you find that sometimes people and families won't acknowledge the notion of mental health, even though these stats are so high?
Can I answer that?
Absolutely.
Sorry. So it is true that a lot of the times, especially in different communities and among different ethnic communities, we see that there is a huge stigma about talking about mental health. So that's another reason that we can say that, a lot of the things that is specific to this community does not get talked about or does not get reflected in large data collection. But we also, Foundry Surrey, we have created a focus group when we started this initiative in the community to actually know what could help to mitigate these problems around barriers, around sorry, I'm rattling. You can edit this part out. So it's basically making sure that we are providing culturally safe care. That's what I'm coming to, making sure that we have the language, we have the ability to communicate that can be, understood, and also can resonate with folks in different communities. So having that language to talk about mental health, because a lot of different ethnic communities do not have the language, do not have the same jargon to talk about mental health and mental health problems. And to see the other side is basically when we talk about mental health in North American society is unfortunately very Western lens. So, healing historically has been an individual practice. Now things are shifting. Now we are going back into the community and how we can heal as a community. But that's the dual here. Yeah.
Well, when I do talk to, I know you guys have more slides. I promised to ask a question every 2 slides, but I got asked that on the first one. But I do find that even in some other places, other countries, that idea of mental health is starting to bubble, because there are deep mental health concerns in other jurisdictions as well. But because Surrey is so diverse and we have almost every jurisdiction represented here in our city, I think it's just so important that, and it's so great that Foundry is coming in with that cultural lens as well, recognizing that even though it's a Western concept in particular, like specific, like not specifically, but mental health in general is more of a Western context idea, but we still need to remember that like human beings, we all have a mind and we all have that emotional wellness that we need to care about, right? But anyways, why don't we move on to the next few slides, and then I can come with more. I have more questions, I'm sure.
Absolutely, Daniel. And I think that part of that conversation too is that we have been really intentional knowing the community of Surrey and how diverse it is. So, we connect with the LIP. We have been really intentional with the partners that we bring on board to make sure that we're addressing that aspect and looking at it from a really holistic and inclusive lens.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. So we thought, we're going a little too far ahead. We thought it would be really beneficial just to remind folks of what a Foundry is. So Foundry really is integrated youth services. It is a holistic wraparound care for youth and their families that allows them to come in and access services, low barrier as needed in the community. So think of it as a one-stop shop or a hub for youth and families. And I think I stole your slide, Aahelee. So is there anything else you would like to say?
So yeah, just a reminder for folks that this initiative is backed by the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions and the Ministry of Health in the province. And every community, the goal is to have, if I'm not wrong, 35 Foundry centers in the province in the next 4 years. So every community has their own Foundry, and Foundry is growing. I will just hop onto the next slide because it pertains to that. So every Foundry is tailored to the individual communities. Mm-hmm. And we have Foundry Surrey coming in very soon. And these are some of the operating Foundries and the centers that are coming soon. So this initiative has shown a lot of success, and that's why we are able to open more and more centers around the province, and Foundry Surrey is one of that center. And basically we will go into the Foundry Surrey section in a moment, talking about how intentional we were to make sure that when we create this center, it should be tailored to the needs of the community, basically hearing from the community first and then responding to them.
Well, and I know you talked about being a one-stop shop. That includes medical services, right? Or at least advice. I just noticed recently you hired a medical service or medical officer or a person in charge of, and someone I know well. But I know you'll probably get into services later. But that includes medical. That includes mental health. I know the school district will have a presence there as well. But in terms of one-stop shop, maybe as you go on, flesh out what that means, because some people may not know one-stop shop for what, right?
Absolutely. I think it's a good reminder.
People will be confused about the difference between like an urgent care clinic and a Foundry, or a walk-in clinic and a Foundry. Like, what's the difference, right?
Absolutely, and we will touch on the care provided. I think it's just really important to highlight that this is what's considered best practice at this point, is having these accessible services for youth and families. And when we talk about low barrier, the great thing about Foundry in general is that even if you're not part of the Surrey community, we know our youth are transient. We know our youth and families, they move about the communities. And so if you're coming from Vancouver or Burnaby and you happen to be in Surrey and you have a need, you can come into the Foundry Surrey location and you can have your needs met. So it is a gated service. Yeah. And so I think that that's very important to highlight in this is that it is incredibly low barrier, non-gated services for youth and families to be able to access support when they need it.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. So talking about the different services that will be offered, and I think really important to say for Foundry Surrey that our community came together. They recognized the need. We have, I think, the most partners, both sitting inside our Foundry, but also referral sources and connections outside of the Foundry, because recognizing that we're not going to be able to provide all of the supports that youth and family need within the Foundry Surrey space. There are going to be opportunities or needs where we're going to have to refer out. Our community partners really connected. And so when we are talking about our core services, and we're not going to list all of our community partners because there have been so many, and it's just been so, I think, overwhelming.
Yeah, I think our introductions took 40 minutes one day. I remember being in that one. Yeah. I'm like, oh, I have to leave now. I've come to an hour of the meeting. We just introduced, like, it was so many people, but it's so great to see the community come together.
Yeah, right? Which is so great. And I think this is the opportunity to thank you as well, Daniel, and the Surrey School District, because you've been a partner of Foundry Surrey from the very beginning. You recognize the need in your community, and you guys have gone above and beyond to help support. And I can say from connecting with others that what you're offering is above and beyond, and so amazing to be partnered with the Surrey School District to continue to provide that support. But Foundry Core Services, so we talked a little bit about primary care, physical health. Again, very low barrier. Folks do not need a personal health number in order to access primary care.
Oh, they don't need a personal health at all?
They do
Well,
not.
Most people have it, right? But
most people have it, but again, it's just a barrier. Sometimes youth will come in and their parents hold that card and they don't hold that information. So, just being aware that they might need that card for blood work or for lab work or all those other pieces, but to see a doctor or a nurse practitioner at Foundry Surrey, they don't require their primary or their healthcare number. And I think that again is just talking about creating low barrier access to services for folks. Awesome. And within that primary care team, we will have family physicians, we will have sexual health, we will have nurse practitioners and nurses, registered nurses as part of that team. And so it's not just about coming in and talking to them about their sexual health. They can come in and talk about substance use, about mental health, about injuries, about acne, about whatever might be coming up for youth in the community. And you're right, we did just hire a medical lead who's helping us who's helping us to build that team. And we are, again, going back to that diversity piece, we're being very aware when we're doing our hiring, what we're looking for in our team, and making sure that team is really representative of our community and the folks that are going to be coming in to access services. And so that's just another layer of the work that we're doing to make sure that when folks walk in to Foundry, they see themselves. They see themselves in the space. They see themselves in the staff that are there.
You had mentioned that you don't need a personal health number. So is there an ability for Foundry to follow up, or is the sense that you'll see kids or youth once or twice and then refer them out to services the way they can get more long-term service?
So it is a mixture. The primary care physicians within the physical health, they are family physicians. So they can be connected to the youth until the age of 24. And then at that point, if they don't have a family practice outside of Foundry Surrey, then we would be looking to connect them to a family practice outside. But a lot of the physicians that come in will also have family practices outside of. And so that allows for connection long term. And we know how important that is when it comes to finding a physician. The same to be said with mental health. So we have a variety of services which allows the youth to come in and they can do short-term support. But if there is a need for them to have something that's more long-term, that can be provided either at the Foundry site or that's a referral to a partner agency where they can continue to receive those supports.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. The best part about this, though, for youth and families is that while that referral, let's say we have to refer to an external service and there is a wait list and it's a 6-month wait list. That sounds very daunting. During that time, youth and families can continue to connect at Foundry and receive support. So they are not just being referred to a service and then in hopes that will happen and then that will connect. They will continue to receive support in whatever that looks like until we can do that warm handover, until they can get to that service. Right. So it's really looking at those gaps and making sure that youth aren't slipping through them.
Outstanding. That's awesome.
Yeah. So and then the other piece that I really wanted to highlight is around our peer support services. So peer support services, I think, is newer for British Columbia, and it's something that in the last probably 5 years has become really recognized as a huge and important piece of the work. So these are peers with lived experience that are able to come in and support other peers through their journey. So whatever that journey might look like. And then again, recognizing that Surrey is such a diverse community, our peer support staff and their lived experiences might look different than other communities. So we're not just looking for folks with lived experience with mental health and substance use, but we're also looking for folks with lived experience through being a refugee or a new immigrant coming into community. We're looking for peer supports that represent our 2S LGBTQ2S plus community.
That's outstanding.
Right. So it's really, I think, again, that holistic approach, because we know that not all youth that come through the door or families that come through the door are going to need continuous mental health support and counseling. They might just need a safe place to connect and receive some of that sense of community, and somebody else being able to relate and being able to talk a little bit about their journey. So not everybody that comes through the door is going to require those more intense interventions.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. And what a perfect location where you're going to be by the city central SkyTrain station to be able to for youth to access, like easy for people to get to, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So just a reminder for folks around the integrated step care model. So we will have services that range from active engagement to higher intensity. And that's what we were talking about. Not everyone's going to need that higher intensity. But active engagement can really help to delay, if not minimize, folks' mental health and substance use struggles. So just being able to come in, connect with like-minded folks, receive resources, be connected to groups, get provided workshops and education, all of that falls under that step one, that active engagement. And part of what we noticed when we were doing our focus groups was the supports for mild to moderate within youth and families and community is where people identified a gap. So people would go in to access services and they were told that they weren't sick enough, that they weren't unwell enough to receive support. And so what this really does is it allows for those folks to have a place where they can come in and they can access those lower intensity supports that they need. And then for folks that come in that need those moderate to high intensity support, they can either access it on site or they can be assisted through that referral process. So like we were saying, there's warm handover.
In some of these other jurisdictions that already have Foundry, have you noticed school counselors or concerned community members that are part of the kid's life, like a coach or whatever, bringing kids to Foundry, or is it just self-referral? Is it okay that other adults bring youth in and say, hey, we need a little bit of support? Because, sometimes, especially school counselors, they're so busy, and sometimes they may feel that they can deal with the mild to moderate situation, depending on what the situation is. But a lot of times they're the ones doing referrals to child youth mental health or other agencies, only to find that, you're right, the kids aren't sick enough. And rightly so, sometimes we only have so many services available in health and in child youth mental health. But is it okay that an adult brings a kid to Foundry? Does that happen regularly? We will have school district people there, but they're not going to always be the ones who know who the sick kids are, right?
Yeah, and actually that's one of the, when we're talking about referrals into Foundry, that's one of the options that we are really putting out into the community, because we also know that there's going to be greater success with youth coming through that door. If they're feeling a little anxious, if they're feeling a little uncertain about what Foundry is and what they're going to be met with when they come through the door. Not all youth have had positive experiences in the past when trying to connect to services. So having a trusted adult come with them into the space, I think is really valuable. And I think that it also allows that trusted adult to see the space and see the services that are being available for youth. And so absolutely. And one of the pieces as we get closer to doors opening that we're working on is arranging some tours for, awesome. Especially our school district counselors and our school district youth support workers who work with those more anxious youth that might not feel comfortable coming in on their own. And that is sometimes a big ask of youth to come by themselves into a space and then ask for support. So whatever we can do to build that safety for youth so that they will come through the door, 100%.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
I like all my answers, answers to my questions are, we'll do that. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. So good.
And also recognizing that, all of the work we're doing now is making assumptions for what the community is going to need. And then within, 6 months of doors opening, we recognize that we're going to have shifts because what we are thinking might be the services might not be the services in the space. What's exciting about that is with the community partners, everyone has been really open to that flexibility. So if in 6 months' time, we need something different, folks are open to being able to provide that support if it looks different.
Well, and I love that you are going to the age of 24. I do recall that age being the original age. And I remember thinking, especially with the location you're in, you're going to be right by Simon Fraser University. I think BCIT is somewhere in there somewhere. Kwantlen is not super close, but not too far away, right? And we have a host of private colleges as well hosted in the city of Surrey. And I know that, having had relatives and friends who's gone through university is a hard time. It's not easy. And, I think that university students sometimes feel that they almost have to self-medicate or take care of themselves when it comes to, I got to get good grades. I got to get through. I got to go to my co-op. I got to get my next job. And especially for grade 11s and 12s going to university, there's a lot of pressure. I'm going to post-secondary as well. And so, being able to be open to that older age group, I know there's always angst in school district counselors and saying, oh no, we have to get the kids services before they turn 18, 19, or else they'll be age out of services. And as we know that kids who age out of any sort of service age out into difficulty generally, right? When kids age out of MCFD care, 90% of them age out into poverty, right? And likewise, if you're aging out of mental health support, well, where will you get that support? So I love it that you go to 24. Was that intentional? Are you reaching out to the universities as well? Because they might be watching on YouTube too. You never know.
Yes. So it is very intentional, because one thing we recognize is that the age of 18 or 19 or whatever that be, the transition age, is not necessarily the universal transition age. It is more subjective. People have different experiences. And I think when people, there's already a pressure for folks who are graduating from high school to university to adult out, to get your life together. This norm that, persists and prevails in our society. And it is damaging to a lot of people, because you have to be a certain way, but you cannot be your authentic self. You cannot, share your needs out. And that is why I think having the age range of 12 to 24 really makes a difference in the community, because you are not, expected to have everything sorted out by the age of 18 when you are having a big life transition. And university is extremely stressful period for a lot of people. And the support that are available in different universities could be often limiting, from my personal experience as well. 100%. So I think Foundry Surrey, coming from my personal experience, it was there for me when I needed it, when I was going through that transition period. And I was very surprised to see that having a support that is available to folks that are a little older. It's coming back to that idea that people will need services and support, especially youth, and we cannot force all youth to have their stuff figured out by by a certain age. And also making sure that there is a continuum of support, when you transition out of the Foundry age group, what does support look like for you? So making sure that there is warm handover happening, making sure that that the services that are available in the community, even if you transition out of the Foundry age group, there are still support available in the community. And also making sure that you stay in the loop, be a part of the community, be a part of the alumni. So I really appreciate that about Foundry in general. From a personal experience, when I was transitioning out of Foundry, I had almost six months of transition period, and how it looked like. And I felt like that it was not abrupt, it was not random. So that is something we are trying to avoid in Foundry, that when warm handovers happen, it's not an abrupt transition. We give more time and space for folks to adjust to that, because it is a change too.
You just mentioned you used Foundry services yourself.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes, I did. I was
questions about your experience with the service. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I'm actually I've taken this on a totally different turn now. But it's interesting because again, because this year we're focusing on diversity, so I can tell you honestly, I'm Chinese and I was born in Canada, but there was still always from a cultural lens that desire for me to be successful, right? To work things out. For example, both my brother and I have advanced degrees because it was sort of, this is what you do as a Asian male. You both have multiple degrees till you can't get any more, right?
Yeah.
And my parents were both actually social workers. My dad was a counselor. My mom was had an RSW. She ran a nonprofit, but there was still that sense of, oh, this is not something we really talk about. Like, I don't know, honestly, I'm just being honest to everybody watching and to you folks. I don't know that I could have walked into a Foundry because I would have thought, oh, what if my parents find out?
Yeah.
What if they, right? What are they gonna cut off my university tuition, or are they gonna be too worried and cut me off from life? I honestly, if I was struggling, and I was in university, I probably couldn't have walked into a Foundry. Now I was able to get other help. My parents were great and very supportive, but again, honestly, I probably couldn't have walked into one. Did you experience that at all? I don't want to guess on your ethnicity, but I'm assuming you're not, white, born in Canada. Like, I just,
I mean, to be very honest, Daniel, I relate to that expectation. One of my closest friends is also Chinese, and all we talk about the high expectations that we have from our parents and what
cultural group are you? So I don't have to keep guessing.
Sorry, I'm South Asian.
South Asian, okay, awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
So it is a very relatable feeling, but talking about the fact that sometimes it takes a lot of courage and a lot of energy for you to walk into a Foundry center. I felt that. I went to one of the older Foundry centers in the province, and I think maybe because I was super anxious walking into the space, and also the space itself, it's a smaller space, I felt hyper visible. So I kind of went back, and then there was Foundry Virtual available, which I was not aware of. My friend made me, pass that information to me because I was really looking for help, and she was an angel for me because she was like, oh, you can access the same services online. So at that time, I felt that, okay, there is this space, and home is a safe space for me, but also recognizing the fact that home might not be a safe space for everybody. But for that time, I felt like, okay, this is my safe space. This is where I can access services. And so that's why I think Foundry Virtual plays a big role. And apart from that, it makes sure that if you have difficulty accessing transportation, virtual is a great option. And also, if you have a Foundry in your community that is still in the development, you have the same services available with Foundry Virtual to access. Just like Foundry Surrey, we have our virtual services available, and we will continue to have it even after development. So
we will. Okay.
Yeah.
Stop going away. Well, and the thing is, Aahelee and Wendy, I also find that, with diversity, there is the cultural aspect, but also, with the Canadian-born, whatever ethnicity, whether you're white or Chinese, and you're born in Canada, maybe multi-generational here. There is still that stressor, because I also know a lot of my friends. I grew up in a very mixed, diverse community. Even though I grew up in Vancouver, we very mixed. And a lot of my Caucasian friends or kids who were born here, and they're multi-generational ethnic. So their parents were here during the 1800s. Even if they're Chinese or South Asian, their English is better than everybody else's, right? They're born here. Their parents don't speak any other language other than English. Yeah. There is that sense also. Hey, 18, you're out. You're an adult. Go make your way. Support yourself, and that can also be a stressor as well. So those of us, I stayed at home till I was 29. So good. Those of us who stayed at home till we're married and have that high academic expectation from being, a second gen. My parents immigrated here. I'm a first gen born Canadian, versus those who are multi-generational here for forever, right? Or Indigenous or LGBTQ+. There is always that angst, I think, of, if I seek service, does that make me weak? Does that make me unindependent? How do you talk kids through that? The person walking through the door and saying, I don't know if I want to be here. Like, this is, like, I feel weak being here. How do you help that person?
Do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, well, I think, again, I can speak from that connection to peer support.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's a really nice place to start when folks aren't
Yeah.
sure what they need or whether it's the right place for them, because it's not as intimidating
Yeah.
as connecting with a counselor might be, or connecting with you know, someone from social services. So when you're connecting with a peer and saying, you know, I feel weak, I feel like I don't need to be here, I feel like I should have my stuff together. When you're connecting with a peer, your peer can be like, you know what, and I felt that at one point too, and this is, you know, what worked for me, or this is what helped me. And it allows for that slow access to support as well. So it doesn't rush that process. Like, you come in and the expectation is that you need to see a mental health professional, or you need to see a substance use professional. It's okay to come into the space, and it's okay to connect with a peer. And maybe you attend a workshop, or, you know, maybe you get access to some other resources, and you go away with resources, and that's all you do that day. That is huge. And so it's not an expectation that they need to connect right away, and that they need to jump into those services right away either. So I think that that's one of the unique pieces around Foundry, is it allows youth to kind of move at their pace as to what they feel comfortable with, and to build those relationships. And I think that we know this, like, it's all about relationship, right? And so as they come in and as they feel safe, and as they start to recognize familiar faces in the space, maybe they do connect with a mental health support. Maybe they do connect with a doctor or primary care, but they don't have to that first time either. And that's okay.
Well, I love it. The youth peer support reminds me when my daughter was learning skiing. She could learn the technical stuff from those older guys. Actually, a couple of her ski instructors were airplane pilots. They could fly an airplane. They could teach her to ski. But her best time was with Kareem, 15-year-old, just got his instructor license, and just took her down the Black Diamonds. She was like, "Oh, it was scary, but it was fun." Right. And it was someone who she could relate to. He was about 5 years older than her at the time. And she felt, oh, look, if this kid can do it, I can also ski this. Right. And so she did have to learn the techniques from the older guys. That guy, that 15-year-old Kareem, you're an awesome ski instructor if you're watching this, by the way. But he wasn't the strongest at teaching technique. He was teaching her how to ski as a 15-year-old. Right. Whereas and she did need both. She did need both. She was better off having both than just having one or the other. Right. And I think that's what youth peer support does as well. It gives that sense of, I have a friend here, but also there to support me, but also is a mental health person, part of this organization. Right?
And very much going back to the if they can do it, I can too. It's quite inspirational. You know, the youth that have lived experience, they often are able to talk about their journey in such an inspiring and powerful way that looks at it as part of who they are now and how they got there. And so I think that can be really helpful for other youth that are struggling, to see that you can be in a really low place, and you're not always going to be there. And this is where you can be. So it's providing that kind of that support, that inspiration, that, you know, they can see themselves. Again, seeing yourself in the space.
I see that this is only slide 7 of 14, but we're already at 36 minutes. So let's just keep going. I told you the conversation goes.
I think we'll skip through this one then. I think we really just wanted to highlight, again, community partnership, and the fact that this has been an ongoing journey of 4 years. But because of that, we have had such an amazing opportunity to connect with youth, with families, with community, and really hear what folks were asking for, and make sure that that's what we're going to be able to provide them when doors open spring 2025.
I'm very excited. I'm very excited.
And I know you were talking about location, so we thought it would be really important just to touch base on where we're going to be. If you drive by the site, it will look like nothing is happening. Everything that's happening is happening on the inside. As Daniel mentioned, there are photos of the, we are well past demolition now. We are actually in framing and construction. So that was a
framing and construction. That's where the magic happens.
Exactly. But we are very much in the process at this point. I don't know if there's anything. I know we've touched about accessibility. We're right across from the SkyTrain station. We're within walking distance. And that was something that our youth and families highlighted as a requirement. They wanted to make sure it was accessible. So our youth and family engagement tables, they viewed, I believe, 21 or 22 different sites
Yeah.
Wow.
So that they were informing even the location of the site before the site was procured. Yeah.
Yeah. Just moving on, keeping time.
Just being aware of our time. Do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah. So yeah, speaking of our youth leadership table and family leadership table, it is one of our oldest governing bodies of Foundry Surrey. So Daniel, when we started this work, we were super intentional that we wanted to create a youth leadership table and family leadership table from the community. So we were intentional about the tables itself representing the community. So we were intentional about the diversity and how it reflects Surrey. So it's one of those things that they have been with us for a long time now, but they have always informed and guided our decision-making processes in Foundry Surrey, starting from, where the location of the center should be, to site designs, to even like participating in different working groups and how the day-to-day operations would look like. So they have been such an integral part of Foundry Surrey's development. And this is what they want to see in their center. So this is a group of people from the community who have seen the needs of the community, telling us what they want to see in their center, and we are just delivering it to them. So it's really giving back to the community. This is something, they inform all of our decisions as we move towards opening the doors. Yeah, Wendy, do you want to touch anything?
No, I think just, again, just highlighting the importance of our youth engagement leadership table and our family engagement leadership table. And then also the work that was done with the focus groups in the larger community of Surrey as well. So when we were talking about identifying gaps and barriers, we went to community, and so we did focus groups with youth, with families, and with community partners to see what they would highlight as barriers and what they would highlight as gaps, so that as we went forward and planned services, we could be really intentional in closing those gaps.
Well, I love it. I'm hoping that even our schools, everybody would say a safe, inclusive place where young people and families find flexible, accessible, and non-judgmental support and care to meet their needs. Like that, to me, that should be the motto of like education and what we do as adults to help kids and families, right?
Yeah. And that was developed by our youth and family tables.
I love it. So good.
Yeah. Keep looking at the wrong camera. So please know I'm not rolling my eyes.
That's okay.
I'm looking at the wrong camera.
We're in small squares. Nobody can see that. It's all good. Yeah.
I think for just recognizing time, we can probably move forward. But this slide is just really talking about what we heard from community around gaps and how we're closing those. I don't want to touch your keyboard. So these were the main gaps that were identified. And so I think it really fits with the theme, Daniel, around diversity. So culturally specific care and mild to moderate services. So really providing support for youth where they're at when they need it. Early interventions, prevention support, all of those kinds of pieces. Family-specific services and programs. So we do have a really active family engagement leadership table, and they really advocate for families and family support. And because of that, we will have family support workers in the space, and we will have groups and workshops intentional to a family's journey, recognizing that their journey might not align with their youth's, and they might be in very different places when coming into access support. And so allowing for families to be able to access support that they need to help them support their youth, wherever their youth might be in their journey. Yeah. And then youth-specific primary care, really focusing on that gender-affirming care, sexual health and eating disorders. And those were gaps that were identified by community and things that we're aware of as we're hiring out our primary care team to make sure that we are attempting to close those gaps.
Outstanding.
Mm-hmm. And then we've already highlighted Foundry virtual services. And I know Aahelee spoke really positively of the experience there. Virtual services will continue to be operational even when site is open. But in the time being, while we're still in development, this is a really great option for youth and families. There's groups, there's individual support. And then going back to that diversity. So we are trying very hard within our partnerships to bring in as many different languages, as many different representations as we can, recognizing we're not going to be able to get them all. And one of the really great things about Foundry Virtual is that if you can't find what you're looking for on site, there's opportunity to find it in virtual care. So again, I think it's just giving people options.
Well, especially Aahelee, you brought up that you didn't want to walk in the door, and this is like almost like a no barrier, safe way, either to get eventually someone through the door, or maybe if they don't want to come through the door, to get that service and support they need virtually, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other cool aspect about the virtual services is that if you are in a community or you're commuting through a community, if you feel like you want to see someone, it will list you what's the closest Foundry around you, so that if you're feeling like, okay, this is a day I could walk into a center and see someone, you could do that. So I really appreciate the virtual services that are available. And yeah, it's a free to download app, and you don't even need to put in your PHN number it's a very simple way to get access to services, which is the core of what is a Foundry. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And then our last slide is always our plug. We definitely want folks to reach out to us, so you can visit both the Foundry BC and Foundry Surrey websites. You can follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And then we're always letting you can sign up for our newsletter. That's another piece. I know, Daniel, you receive it, and it really highlights all of the work that's being done and where we're at in the process. And then the final piece is that we are still looking for donations and support from community. So we continue to try and close that gap of need. We have lofty goals. We will be the largest Foundry in BC when our doors open. And so really, if folks are feeling inspired to please donate or share our information to others who might be willing to do so as we continue to.
In terms of donation, you folks are a nonprofit, so it is like a tax deduction for if people, want to donate, or is that
Yeah.
And we are a nonprofit and a charitable donation.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the school district we can partner on a Foundry fundraising event. You never know what ideas pop up as we do these things. I know the Jeff Brendau, who edits all this for us, is really is actually my fundraising person as well. So that's an idea that we could percolate, and I have it on YouTube, so you can never say that. I can never forget that we had that idea. But I think doing some sort of fundraising within the schools to make Foundry bigger and better, especially as we do also branch out into South Surrey as well and serve. Like Surrey is almost like 6 different cities, right?
Yeah.
So you're serving one segment, but there are like other segments of the community, such as Cloverdale and Surrey, that are very far from this Foundry, and people need services as well. So of course, I know that everyone in Surrey is welcome, because that's why we're by the SkyTrain, the bus loops, and all those things. But I think fundraising is so important as we build out this Foundry, but also the one that's to come as well.
Absolutely, 100%.
Well, I'm going to intentionally leave it on this slide, but make us a little bit bigger. How do I do that? There we go. Oh, no, I don't think I can do that with all of us. So I'll just leave it here so that people can see this information. But are there any final words you both might have? Again, time flies when you're having a good time and having a great conversation.
Yeah, that went very quickly.
Yeah, 46 minutes goes by very fast. And but any sort of final words from both of you, especially both being so heavily invested and involved in Aahelee, you've been a client as well, now transitioning to this role of leadership in Foundry and making sure other people get the benefit you got. Any final words from the two of you?
Wendy, do you want to go first?
I just think I really just want to extend my gratitude, Daniel, for having us be able to come and speak about Foundry. And I think if folks have any questions, if they're looking for resources, if they're wanting to connect, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are here, and our mission is to connect youth and families to the supports that they need. And that starts now, not just when Foundry doors open. And we're so excited to see you in the space in the spring. And please come and check us out. Feel free to reach out and ask for tours and to bring youth through. We want this to be an accessible space that folks feel safe and comfortable coming into.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I want to highlight is that there is resources available out there, and I think a lot of it is based on relationships and connections. And I think that's what Foundry is trying to prioritize. Foundry Surrey is trying to prioritize. If you are in need of services or support, we are there. And if you are not super comfortable, again, there's Foundry Virtual in the meantime, before we open our doors to the community. Yeah, and feel free to, follow us on our socials and our newsletter. And yeah, keep supporting us. We are almost there.
And we are almost there.
Yeah.
Are we thinking May as well, around there, May, June? If you're framing now, I'm thinking that timing, but yeah, I'm not a builder, so
Yeah, and so sometime within probably late spring, with some soft launch services. So understandably, with such a large project, it's going to, and with so many services involved, it will be a soft launch.
Yeah. Well, better build it well than and have it ready, right? That's important as well. But thank you so much, you two, for coming on, Wendy and Aahelee. I truly appreciate it, and definitely will continue the conversation of fundraising and getting things going. But I can tell you honestly, from a parent, I had mentioned earlier that when I was a youth, probably would have had a hard time going into Foundry, even though my parents were very supportive and in social work and all those things. But I can tell you quite honestly, from a parent's perspective, I have a 9 and she's 13 now, in grade 8. I would have no problem. In fact, one of the things my wife and I would do if my kids were struggling with mental health and wellness would be like, hey, go seek help. We're great here. This is dad's work, in fact, but I think you need somebody else to support you. I think it's so important that families realize that it's not a sign of weakness or a sign of weakness in the family if you get services from outside to support you in your family. In fact, that will only strengthen your family. And I've always said to my kids, if you're struggling, go get help from a teacher, go get help from your school nurse or someone like that, and bring us on board, and we'll definitely be part of that conversation with you. I think sometimes for parents, that's the hardest thing, is when your kids are seeking help, you feel like you failed. And I think it's so important for parents and caregivers and guardians to realize that it's not a failure. You've actually given them the permission to go get support, right? And that is so vital, so key for parents, caregivers, guardians to realize that giving your child or the youth that you care for permission to go seek help is the greatest tool and the greatest gift of all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I appreciate you too. Don't leave as I hang up this or I end the recording. But just want to thank everyone for watching, and we'll definitely be on in a month and a bit from now as we have another video about diversity, mental health, and how the Surrey School District and other organizations can serve you and your families. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.